Italy. We all know it, we all love it, we all adore its food, and we all adore its culture. But what might shock a lot of people to know is that Italy, the modern incarnation of the state, is a very new and very young country. It's actually barely older than independent Australia, and it's younger by far than the United States. See, Italy only formed as a modern nation in the 19th century, but the idea of Italy and Italian unification, it goes back for centuries. Today we're going to be talking about one of the founding fathers of the modern Italian state, Giuseppe Garibaldi. Welcome back to 5 Minute History, the weekly series where patrons choose the topic. This week, courtesy of Louis, we'll be discussing Giuseppe Garibaldi, in most likely a way over 5-minute history, because, well, it's Giuseppe Garibaldi. Of all the big personalities from the 19th century, there are a few quite as interesting as Garibaldi, to be honest. He's a soldier, sailor, revolutionary, a statesman, and he's also quite possibly the most stubborn man ever born. No, really, he believes so wholeheartedly in his beliefs that he may lay claim to being the most stubborn man in history. By the time of his death in 1882, he had fought wars on 2 continents and helped form a united Italian nation from a collection of kingdoms and duchies, all the while under pressure from every single great power in Europe, and also for a time, threatened with execution from the major Italian power that he would later help form the Kingdom of Italy with. He was so impressive that in fact people in the modern era like Che Guevara would hold him in high esteem almost a century later, and well, he's still held in high esteem today. Garibaldi was born on the 4th of July in 1807 in the city of Nice, a city that under the time was under intermittent French and then Sardinian rule. His family, like most other families in the southern Mediterranean coast, were connected to the sea, and at a very early age he would go to sea as a merchant mariner. During this early career, he would move across the entire Mediterranean, following where his ship naturally would go, and it was during a voyage to Taganrog in the Russian Empire in 1833 that his political life would begin to evolve. It was there he met a member of Giuseppe Mazzini's Young Italy movement, which was a secret society dedicated to Italian unification as a liberal republic rather than a monarchy. This group was, though, largely full of idealists, not too dissimilar to the early French Revolution or the Greek Revolution, and these people had great thoughts and great ideas for the future, but they were not grounded in reality. Later that year, though, Garibaldi would meet Mazzini himself in Genoa and would officially join the Carbonari Revolutionary Network. In 1834, he would participate in the failed Mazzini uprising in Piedmont, and following the ruling Sardinian government, would actually sentence him to death in absentia. Garibaldi, though, knowing that failure meant, well, death, had already made the decision to flee, sailing first to Tunisia and then on to South America, where he would begin 14 years in exile. Landing in Brazil, Garibaldi would almost immediately join in with the Ragamuffin War of 1835, a republican rebellion by fighters known as the Farrapos against the Brazilian imperial government, where he would fight for a period of time for the short-lived Rio Grande's Republic. It was during these campaigns that he would meet a fighter called Ana Maria de Jesus Ribeiro da Silva, known simply as Anita, and the two would become enamored with each other, and in short order she would become his first wife, and the two would begin to have children. But by 1841, the couple had moved to Montevideo in Uruguay, where Garibaldi began to work as a trader and schoolmaster before eventually he would take up arms in the Uruguayan Civil War. He would take command of the Uruguayan fleet and he would raise an Italian legion from the large Italian expatriate community living in that city. And it was during this conflict that he would actually start to adopt red shirts for his followers. Now allegedly, these shirts were taken from a factory in Montevideo that had intended to export them to Argentinian slaughterhouses because, you know, red, blood, get on red, blood not stain. Anyway, the red shirt would become a uniform for his followers in the future, and it would be referred to as red shirts or Garibaldini for the people who would wear them and follow the man. And although he would ultimately be defeated in this war, like pretty much every other war he fought, his conduct in Uruguay would earn him the respect of both his allies and his enemies, being known as a brave and capable commander. Now, I point out that he loses almost every war he fights here, and the reason for that is it shows just how stubborn in his ideals the man was. He kept losing, and then he would basically turn around and go, I didn't hear no bell, and get back up and keep going. News of revolutionary upheaval across Europe in 1848 would bring Garibaldi home though, and he would return to Italy with 60 men, called legionaries, offering his services first to King Charles Albert of Sardinia. Yes, the country that had sentenced him to death. He was nothing if not cocky and bold. When that failed, he went to the provisional government of Milan, which was midway through its revolt against Austrian occupation. He then led his forces to minor victories at Luino and Morosoni in the First Italian War of Independence, but the broad campaign would actually collapse completely after the Piedmontese defeat at the Battle of Novara in 1849. Unperturbed, Garibaldi then moved to Rome, where the short-lived Roman Republic was in declared resistance within the Papal States. He took command of its defence against a French expeditionary force sent by Louis Napoleon to restore papal authority, and on the 30th of April 1849 his forces defeated a numerically superior French army at the port of San Pacrizino, but again, even though he won the battle, French reinforcements arrived, the siege tightened, and by late June the Republic's position was hopeless. At the final assembly of the Roman Council, Garibaldi entered the chamber covered in blood and urged continued resistance from the mountains. People, seeing the man who they all respected, absolutely soaked head to toe and saying, no, we're keeping on going, would follow him, and he would lead his followers northward, being hunted by the French forces. It was during this journey, though, that Anita, pregnant by now with their 5th child and already sick, would die near Comacchio. Garibaldi himself would actually barely escape, eventually taking refuge briefly in San Marino before slipping away to the coast. Forced into exile again, he would make his way to New York City in 1850, where he worked for a time in a candle factory on Staten Island before resuming a life at sea. Eventually, though, he'd make his way back to Europe in 1854. Although already famous by this point, the campaign that made Garibaldi a legend came in 1860. The uprising in Sicily against the Bourbon Kingdom of the Two Sicilies brought him back to Italy on the night of the 5th of May, where he departed Quarto near Genoa with approximately 1,000 volunteers aboard 2 ships bound for Sicily, where they would arrive at the 11th of May. At Calatafimi on the 15th with just 800 men against the 1,500-strong garrison of Neapolitan troops, who held the high ground, mind you, Garibaldi would actually order an uphill bayonet charge. He supposedly told his lieutenant Nino Bixio, "Here we either make Italy or we die." Possibly propaganda after the fact, because it sounds amazing, but also it's Garibaldi, he probably would have said it, to be honest. Miraculously, somehow, he won, and the battle established the dominance of Garibaldian forces on the island. The victory, too, brought the Sicilian fighters to his side, and his ranks swelled, to the point where Garibaldi was able to declare himself dictator of Sicily in the name of King Victor Emmanuel II of Sardinia. He would then lay siege to Palermo, and with a British admiral facilitating a truce, the Neapolitan garrison actually surrendered. He won a further battle at Milazzo and crossed the Straits of Messina, marching northward through the Italian peninsula. And on the 7th of September, Garibaldi would end the war, entering Naples by train. His army, now 24,000 strong, could not decisively break the Neapolitan forces at the Battle of Volturno on the 30th of September, though, but the arrival of the Royal Sardinian Army, much to be said a much more professional army than his, now finally secured the day. At a famous meeting at Teano on the 26th of October, Garibaldi greeted Victor Emmanuel as King of Italy, shook his hand and rode at his side into the city of Naples. He then retired to his farm on the rocky island of Caprera, refusing any reward for his services, and the Kingdom of Italy would be proclaimed on the 17th of March, 1861. He's not done yet, though. See, Garibaldi couldn't sit still. He wasn't finished, because Rome still belonged to the Papal States and was supported by the French. In 1866, during the Third Italian War of Independence against Austria, he would lead a force of 40,000 volunteers into the Trentino and defeat Austrian forces at the Battle of Bezzecca. He would then make 2 failed attempts to take Rome from the papal garrison, and was wounded at the leg in the Battle of Matana in 1867. Being the big personality that he was, he did kind of run afoul of the Italian government here for his attempts to take the Eternal City, and he was briefly imprisoned by the Italian government because of this. Because, he kept poking the French Empire. Rome, though, would eventually fall to the Italian army in 1870 without his direct involvement, and this is largely due to the fact the French were busy getting stomped by the German army in the Franco-Prussian War. His last military campaign came during that Franco-Prussian War of 1870 and 71, when he offered his sword to the newly declared French Republic. This is particularly funny when you consider that France, having long been the protector of papal power in Rome and his sworn enemy, was now the people he was offering to help. The French would accept his services, though, and he commanded the Army of the Vosges and was subsequently elected to the French National Assembly for his services. In his later years, he was confined increasingly to Capraia by arthritis. Garibaldi moved further left in his politics too during this time. He supported women's emancipation, universal suffrage, progressive taxation, and the abolition of the death penalty. He would champion the cause of the Paris Commune and declared solidarity with the International Working Men's Association. He would fund the League of Democracy in 1879 while serving for many years as a member of the Italian Parliament. Garibaldi would die on the 2nd of June 1882 at Caprera, having asked to have his bed moved so he could see the sea during his final hours. He would later be buried on the island next to his last wife, and it is there that he still lays today. Since his death, there have been ships of the Italian Navy named in his honour, including the Italian Navy's first ever aircraft carrier, along with a World War II cruiser that later was turned into a missile cruiser. That carrier, by the way, still exists. It's actually about to be sold to Indonesia to continue its service, and it will stick around for decades to come. Statues of the man also stand firm in many Italian cities and across the world. Italy has honoured him with stamps, and in Uruguay they have even released a 10 peso banknote with his likeness. There's even a fish named after him. I hope you all enjoyed the video today. Like, comment, subscribe. Shout out to the patrons, particularly Louis, for suggesting this topic, and I will catch you all next time. Sidebar, when Louis suggested this, he also DM'd me and flat out said, good luck keeping this to 5 minutes. Shut up, you're right.